You should be grateful every single day for being here. Without my parents, you'd have nothing, not even a roof over your head. That was the sentence I heard the most from my brother while growing up. My name is Daniel. I'm 28 years old, and I was adopted when I was only 4. My adoptive parents always told me they loved me, but Liam, their biological son, made sure to remind me every day that I was just a stranger in that house. He never hit me. He didn't need to. His words were sharp enough to knock me down. I remember one day in particular. I must have been around 13. It was Liam's birthday, and my parents had rented out a huge party venue with a DJ, lights, and even a cotton candy machine. He got a new Xbox, designer clothes, expensive sneakers. After unwrapping the last gift, he looked at me with that smug half smile and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Hey Danny, what about you? Did you get anything this year?" "Oh, right. I forgot. You don't have real parents." People laughed. My parents laughed. And me? I pretended I was going to the bathroom, but I actually locked myself in a stall and cried for nearly half an hour. The worst part wasn't even what he said. It was that no one thought there was anything wrong with it. That night, I understood I was on my own. Liam was the prince of the house. The heir. Everything revolved around him, and he knew it. Anytime he could, he'd remind me I was just the family's plan B, as he liked to say. Even after I became an adult, when I finally managed to leave that house, his poison still echoed in my head. I worked as a delivery guy, doing side gigs whenever I could. I lived in a tiny studio apartment that had more cockroaches than silverware. Meanwhile, Liam flaunted trips to Dubai, sports cars and watches worth more than my entire car on Instagram. Lying in my cramped little room, staring at the ceiling, I'd remember all the times Liam called me nobody, useless, dead weight. I remembered the day he shoved me in front of his friends and yelled, "Careful guys, the orphan's mad, he wants attention." And everyone laughed. They always laughed. I was probably 15 in that memory. We had just gotten back from school, and he was in the living room with 3 of his friends, all playing video games while I helped my adoptive mom carry in the groceries. As soon as I placed the last bag on the counter, he yelled from the living room, "Luxury orphan, come clean up the mess you made in the kitchen." I hadn't touched a thing, but I went anyway, because if I answered back, he'd make it worse. One time, he smeared ketchup all over my clothes and told our parents I had a dramatic performance because I wanted attention. They believed him. He was a master manipulator. His words became instant truth to our parents. "Daniel's just jealous of my shine," he once said casually during Thanksgiving dinner. Imagine growing up not knowing who your real parents are. Kinda sad. I stared at my plate, trying to keep my hands from shaking around the fork. My mom just gave an awkward smile and kept slicing the turkey. My dad made some stupid comment about resilience, like it was some kind of compliment. I wasn't their son. I was a charity project. And I knew that from the beginning. I used to wonder if they would have adopted me if they had already had Liam when they found me. I never had the guts to ask out loud, but I knew the answer. Liam was born 2 years after I was adopted, and it was like everything suddenly changed. When he came along, with his light eyes and blonde hair like my mom's, the smiles started to fade for me. The time, the affection, the photos on the wall, everything revolved around him. There was a shelf in the living room filled with picture frames. All of them showed Liam. Liam fishing with Dad, Liam on his first day of school, Liam at Christmas. There was only one photo of me. One, lonely, small frame, tucked beside a plant pot like it was there out of obligation. At 17, I got my first job delivering pizza. It was the only way I could save money to get out of that house. My parents said it was great that I was working, that it would build character. Liam, on the other hand, he got everything he wanted. A car at 16, a red Mustang birthday present. Meanwhile, I biked to the pizzeria with a stuffed backpack and a torn raincoat. He loved mocking me in the smallest ways. "Look, Mommy," he'd say with that mean grin, twirling his car keys, "your rental son is heading out again to serve people. A real pride for our family of entrepreneurs, huh?" One night, I came home exhausted from work. It was almost 2 a.m. I was soaked from the rain, and all I wanted was a hot shower and a bed. I used the back door so I wouldn't wake anyone, but as soon as I stepped into the kitchen, I saw Liam leaning against the counter with a beer in his hand, and that same look of disgust he always had reserved for me. "Hey, little slave," he said without even moving. "Were you out selling your body or still stuck at that pathetic job?" I didn't answer, just walked past him, but he wouldn't let it go. "Talk to me, you half-baked human." He followed me down the hall. "Cat got your tongue now?" I turned around, tired, wet, fury packed in every bone. I just said, "Leave me alone, Liam." He laughed, loud and mocking, echoing through the house. You should be grateful, you know. If it weren't for my parents' charity, you'd be sleeping on the street. Don't forget that, Daniel. You're not family. You're an add-on, a favor. The next morning, my stuff was scattered on the porch. He'd thrown my backpack, clothes, even my ID into the yard. Oops, my bad, bro, he said with a smug smile from the window. They slipped down the stairs. I gathered my things in silence. My clothes soaked with dew, my ID covered in dirt, my backpack ripped at the zipper. No one came to the door. Not my dad. Not my mom. Not a single sign that anyone cared about what was happening. I left that morning on foot, my backpack slung over one shoulder and my pride shattered. I didn't cry. Not anymore. I had learned to turn pain into silence. I found a cheap little room behind a house in a far-off neighborhood. It was tiny, damp, with a mattress directly on the floor, but it was mine. And above all, it was quiet. No one called me garbage there. No one laughed at me. For the first time, I could breathe. I spent years there, working in the mornings, delivering in the afternoons, studying at night whenever I could. No luxury, no time for anything else. But every penny I saved reminded me I was leaving that past behind, 1 cent at a time. Meanwhile, Liam was posting rooftop photos with champagne glasses, driving cars I couldn't even pronounce, making videos saying that success is for those with a winner's blood. Blood. That word pierced me, because he said it knowing I didn't have the same blood. He always made that clear. To others, he was an influencer. To me, he was just a predator with Wi-Fi. There was one time he recorded a video in front of our parents' house with a perfectly rehearsed speech. I grew up here, in this blessed home where my parents taught me to be strong, honest, and hardworking. Everything I've achieved comes from this solid foundation. I watched that video sitting on the edge of my thin bed, cold pizza on my lap, and wet feet because the roof had leaked again. His camera didn't shake once, but I was shaking with rage. He spoke like he was an only child, as if I had never existed, as if the suffering he caused me had been erased with editing and a vintage filter. Sometimes I caught myself wondering what would have happened if I had been adopted by another family, or if I had stayed in the system. Would it have been better? Would they at least not have made me believe I was a burden, a mistake, a constant reminder that I didn't belong? But then I'd remember the one thing that kept me going. I didn't depend on anyone else. Everything I was, everything I had been earned with my own hands. While he got applause and gifts, I got calluses and debt, and still, I kept going, one step at a time, one delivery at a time, because I knew that if I stopped, I would fall apart. Even after I left that house, Liam found ways to reach me. He used social media to provoke me indirectly, and sometimes not even that indirectly. Once, he posted a picture of a fancy meal with the caption, "While some live off tips, others dine like kings," and he tagged the restaurant's location, like he wanted to show exactly where he was and where I'd never be. Another time, he showed up at the pizzeria where I worked, pulled up in a shiny Audi, 2 friends laughing loudly, acting like they were on a stage. "Look who's here, my little foster brother," he shouted, already pulling out his phone to record. "He's killing it, folks. Delivery champ of the hour." The laughter erupted. His buddies played along. I was behind the counter, apron stained, and just kept my head down, pretending it didn't bother me. "Smile, Danny. It's not every day you get to be on my Insta," he mocked, pointing the camera straight at my face. The manager told him to leave, but of course Liam left as the victim. He threw a $50 bill on the floor and said, "Buy yourself a little dignity with that." I didn't pick up the money, didn't even look at him. Just went into the stockroom and stayed there, breathing deeply for 20 minutes, trying to remember who I was before all of this. But the worst part hadn't even come yet. A few weeks later, my adoptive mom called me for the first time in over a year. I answered, startled, thinking it must be an emergency. But no, she just wanted to ask me to go easy on Liam. "He's going through a tough time," she said, in that gentle voice she never used with me. "He's under a lot of pressure with work. Maybe you could avoid provoking him." I stayed silent. Provoking him. I was the one avoiding every family gathering. I was the one changing paths if I saw his car. I was the one pretending I didn't see the online jabs. "Mom," I said softly, holding back. "You know what he's done to me since forever. You know." "Daniel," she cut me off. "You two are brothers. You need to learn how to coexist." Brothers. Like the issue was split down the middle. Like it was a childish feud and not a lifetime of humiliation. And before I could say anything else, she added, "Deep down, you must be a little jealous of him too. He's always been more outgoing, more confident. You take everything too seriously, son. Son. That word stung, because she only ever used it when she was correcting me, never when I needed protection. I hung up the phone, shaking, and that day, for the first time, I seriously considered cutting all ties, but I still had hope, a flicker, an illusion. Then came Christmas. I wasn't planning to go, of course. I'd been spending the holidays alone for 3 years, usually working double shifts since no one wanted to work around that time. But that year, my mom insisted so much that I gave in. She said Dad missed me, that the whole family would be there, that it would be different this time. I showed up with a homemade dessert, nervous, in the same old coat as always. No one came to the door to greet me. I entered through the side and went straight to the kitchen. As I set the dish down on the counter, I heard his voice from the living room. "Hey, look who's here! The iFood heir!" Laughter, loud laughter, laughter in unison. My uncles, cousins, family friends, all laughing. I froze for a moment, still holding the serving spoon. The stainless steel trembled in my hand. My face burned. My chest tightened. I pretended it wasn't about me and went to the table. Sat in the corner, quiet, waiting for it to pass. But it didn't pass. He walked by me with a whiskey glass in hand and whispered in my ear, "You want to take leftovers back to your little room?" I froze. Again. I always froze. Because if I reacted, I'd be the ungrateful adopted one, the angry one, the walking trauma. So I swallowed hard and stayed put, empty stomach, shattered soul. During dinner, he made sure to loudly tell everyone how he'd just closed a 6-figure consulting deal, showed videos from a trip to the Maldives, made fun of the event's waiter. He was the center of attention, as always. When it came time to exchange gifts, he handed out elegant boxes with imported perfumes, fancy wine, electronics. When it was my turn, he handed me a small package, wearing that smug smile. "A little something for our warrior," he said. I opened it. It was a bar of soap, from a hotel. I stared at it for a few seconds. A white, round soap with a resort logo embossed on it. He even had the nerve to say, "I picked it up on my last cruise. Thought of you right away." The whole room erupted in laughter. People who had watched me grow up. People who used to call me their heart son when I was a kid. People who now laughed at my humiliation like it was a holiday comedy. I got up slowly, didn't say a word, put the soap back in the box and left it on the table, walked out the door without looking back. Someone muttered, "Stay, Daniel," but it sounded more like obligation than desire. On the way home, the sky was overcast and a light drizzle clung to the bus window. I didn't want to cry. I'd cried too much already, but the tears came anyway, not out of anger, out of a deep pain. A kind of mourning for a family that was never really mine. A suffocating certainty that I had always been just an extra in their story, a background figure in their Christmas photo. I spent New Year's Eve alone, delivering orders until 11 p.m. Got a few decent tips. An old man in an elevator wished me a happy new life. That phrase echoed in my head. Happy new life. The next day, I opened Instagram out of habit. First post on my feed. Liam on a yacht, champagne in hand, with a provocative caption. Starting 2024 the right way. While some carry backpacks, I carry my family in luxury. His smiling face, wind-blown hair, perfect teeth. It made me nauseous. But the worst part was the comments. Such an inspiration. Wish I were half the man you are. Born to lead. All lies. He was a king built on my pain. I began avoiding him even more. Blocked everything. Social media, his number, and any remaining ties to that family. I needed to breathe. I needed to stop feeling like garbage every time I heard his name, but the universe seemed to enjoy testing me. 2 months later, I walked into the cafe I always went to after my shift, and there he was, sitting with 2 suited men, flaunting a new Rolex, speaking loudly like always. I tried to turn around, but he spotted me. "Daniel!" he shouted like we were in a movie. "Look who showed up! My little delivery bro!" The men laughed with that awkward chuckle of people who aren't sure if it's a joke or just plain bullying. I froze. He stood up, walked over with open arms as if to hug me and said, "What a coincidence, huh? You working here now? Or just begging for scraps?" It hit me like a kick to the gut. I just took a deep breath and walked out, head down, eyes fixed on the floor. I heard him call out, loud enough for the whole cafe to hear, "Go on, champ. The world needs people like you to carry the trays." The next day, I got messages from his friends on my phone. Screenshots, edits, a meme with an old picture of me in my pizza uniform, and the caption, "When you're adopted and still just a background character in your own life." He had shared my photo, dug up my past, and was laughing about it publicly. The blood rushed to my head, not with rage but with disappointment, saturation. A line had been crossed that I didn't even know existed. I didn't want to ignore it anymore. I didn't want to hide. With every insult, every joke, he made it clear that I would never be seen as part of the family, just a stepping stone for his ego to climb higher. I started having anxiety attacks, something I'd never felt before. Random tremors, shortness of breath at work, a racing heart just from seeing his name pop up. One night, I ended up in the ER thinking I was having a heart attack. The doctor looked over my tests and said calmly, "This is exhaustion, severe stress. You need rest." But how could I rest? My body may have left that house, but my mind was still a prisoner of that hell they called family. I began isolating myself even more, ignored everyone, just worked and slept. And even in my sleep, the nightmares came. Liam laughing, my mom saying I was ungrateful, my dad giving me that silent look of disappointment that hurt more than yelling. Until one night, out of nowhere, my phone rang. Unknown number. I picked up instinctively, my voice raw from exhaustion. "Daniel Cooper, this is MacArthur and Lane Law Offices. We've been trying to reach you regarding Mr. Henry Walters." I froze. That name. It sounded familiar but distant, like from a life I never lived. "Sorry, who?" "Henry Walters, your biological grandfather. He passed away 2 weeks ago and left a will. You are the sole legal heir. We need to schedule a meeting." My mouth went dry. My chest tightened. I almost laughed. It felt like a prank. But the woman on the other end spoke with such certainty. She listed my full name, my current address, even my social security number. It was real. The man I thought had forgotten about me had left me everything. Update. Last night, something happened that shattered whatever was left of my past. I received a notification on my phone. It was a news article shared by an old classmate. "Mansion under Liam Cooper's name goes to auction due to outstanding debts." I opened the article. I saw a picture of my parents' house, the one where I grew up feeling like an intruder. The article said the property was listed for public auction due to unpaid taxes and a defaulted mortgage. My heart didn't know what to feel. Relief, revenge, sadness. But it was what happened a few hours later that truly broke whatever piece of me still held on to that past. I was at home, still processing everything, when my phone rang. A number I hadn't seen in a long time. I answered with my heart racing. "Daniel?" It was my adoptive father's voice. Rare, tired, tense. "Liam, he's going through a rough time, and, well, he asked me to reach out. Said, maybe you could help." I didn't reply. "The house went to auction. You saw it, right? We're out of options. And, well, he's desperate. Do you think you could lend something? Anything to keep him from losing everything?" I stayed quiet for a few seconds. On the other end, the old man who once called me son now sounded like he was speaking to a bank. "You know what he's done to me, right?" I said, my voice trembling. "Daniel, he's your brother. Family helps. Always helps." I swallowed hard. When did anyone in that family ever help me? "Now's not the time to bring up old wounds, son." There it was again. Son, a word used like a key to open a door that never really existed. "You know what he gave me for Christmas? A bar of soap. From a hotel. After humiliating me in front of everyone. After spreading my photos online with jokes, after calling me garbage my whole life." Silence. "Daniel, he made mistakes, but he's sorry." "Is he sorry or is he broke?" He didn't reply right away. Just let out a long sigh, like someone who already knew they were about to hear no but had to try anyway. "You have the chance to show you're better than he ever was to you." That sentence hit like a slap. "I don't need to prove anything to anyone," I said. "Especially not to you." I hung up before he could reply. Threw my phone on the bed and sat on the edge, my whole body shaking. It wasn't anger, not anymore. It was a pain so old it had become part of me, like a scar you forget about until the skin stretches and it burns again. And then, that same night, I went to the auction site. My parents' house was listed. There were photos of the front, technical details, the starting bid. I clicked, read everything, revisited every inch of that place where I grew up a stranger, and without thinking twice, I placed the first bid. Update 2. I did something I never thought I'd have the courage to do. I bought the house, won it at auction for less than half its market value. And when I finalized the transaction, I sat on the couch with the receipt in my hands, staring at the document like it was a silent trophy. Not out of revenge, not out of hate, but out of justice. The following week, I drove to the property, parked my modest car in the same driveway where Liam's Audi used to gleam. The grass was overgrown, the paint was peeling, and the living room windows were covered with old sheets. Their house. now mine. I walked in with the new key in my pocket, accompanied by a rep from the real estate company. He handed me the inventory, mentioned the previous residents had left in a rush and left everything a mess. I asked him to leave me alone for a few minutes. I walked through the living room. The couch was still the same. I remembered sitting there at 12, trying to hold back tears after yet another joke about being orphanage leftovers. I made my way to my old room, the place where I spent so many nights pretending everything was fine, where I hid letters I never sent, where I wished I could disappear, where I begged to be seen. And right there, in that time capsule, I made a decision. That house would become something else, a symbol of rebirth, not of pain. 2 weeks later, the trucks started arriving. The furniture was removed, the walls were painted, the bathrooms were renovated. And the next month, I installed a new sign at the entrance of what used to be the Cooper family mansion. Hope Home, shelter for abandoned children. The house that once erased me would now be a refuge for those left behind. The first children arrived on a Friday morning, shy with tiny backpacks and wide, cautious eyes. I welcomed them at the door myself, offered them juice, showed them the bedrooms, let them pick their own beds. One of them, a little girl around 7, whispered softly, "Can we stay here forever?" I swallowed hard, knelt down, and answered with all the conviction I had, "As long as you need. And here, no one will ever make you feel like less than you are. Never." Every corner of that house was redefined. The living room became a playroom. My old bedroom turned into a small library filled with books donated by local schools. Where once there were insults, now there were giggles and children reading aloud. Day by day, a weight lifted off my shoulders. I was turning the same floor that once crushed me into a home that could lift others up. But of course, not everyone took it silently. 3 days after the official opening, Liam showed up, wearing a wrinkled dress shirt, sunken eyes, a worn-out look. He looked smaller. For the first time, he actually looked small, standing in front of me. "Daniel," he began, standing outside the gate, "we need to talk." "About what?" "About everything. What you did. The house. The situation. I'm living in a friend's spare room. I've got nothing left. And now you own it all." I stood still, looking at him. The same man who had humiliated me in public, mocked my misery, now stood there with glassy eyes, almost pleading. "I was wondering if you could help. Alone. Anything. Just until I get back on my feet." My blood ran cold. For a second, the old reflex kicked in. Say yes to be accepted. To avoid conflict. To not make waves. But I wasn't that boy in the corner of the dinner table anymore. "No," I said without hesitation. He blinked, caught off guard. "What do you mean, no?" "Just that. No. You taught me that, remember? Everyone gets what they deserve. You reap what you sow." He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He just stood there, frozen between disbelief and desperation. For the first time, I saw Liam without control, without a stage, without a laughing crowd. "You're really doing this to me?" he said, voice trembling. "After everything?" "Exactly because of everything," I replied. "You laughed when I was at rock bottom, threw my things out, exposed me, treated me like garbage for almost 20 years. And now you want help?" He rubbed his face hard, frustrated. "Daniel, please. You won, man. Look at this place. You're the good guy now. You proved your point. I'm broke, okay? What do you want? Me to humiliate myself more?" "I don't want anything from you, Liam. I never did. I just wanted peace. And now I have it. This isn't peace. This is revenge disguised as charity. No, this is justice and freedom." He stared at me for a long time, his eyes welling up. Then he looked at the gate, where one of the kids was playing with a toy car. "This place?" he mumbled, pointing at the house. "This was mine." "No, it wasn't. It was our parents'. Now it's mine. And now it's theirs." I nodded toward the children in the yard. People who need it. People who deserve it. He stepped back. I didn't feel pleasure seeing him like that, but I didn't feel guilt either. It was just final, a necessary closure. Liam lowered his head, shoved his hands in his pockets, and turned away. Walked down the sidewalk like a man with nowhere left to go. No final look, no last words, just the sound of his footsteps fading in the distance. And then, I closed the gate. I walked back inside the house, heart pounding, not with anger, but with something new, something I had never felt before. Control. For the first time in my life, I wasn't a spectator of my pain. I was the author of my response. The kids didn't even notice what had just happened. They kept running around, laughing, playing in the same garden where I once spent hours in silence, listening to my parents praise Liam for absolutely anything. I watched one of the boys trip on the lawn and a girl next to him reached out her hand to help him up. That hit me hard. That was it. That was exactly what I had always wanted to see in this place. Empathy, care, a small act of kindness where there used to be nothing but competition. That night, I sat alone in the old living room, the same room where I had so often been told I was too lucky to have been chosen, where I heard Liam compare me to trash, to a stray dog, to a beggar. I sat in the same corner of the couch where, at 14, I once curled up after being kicked away from the table because the adults were talking. But this time, I sat there as the owner, as a grown man, as someone who had survived it all. I grabbed my phone and opened the folder with the documents the lawyer from my grandfather's firm had sent me. The will was clear. Companies, properties, investments, all in my name. He had known about me. He'd reached out years earlier, but my family had rejected any contact, said it was unnecessary to involve me in that kind of thing. They hid my grandfather from me, erased an entire part of my history, but in the end, he found me. Among the documents was a handwritten letter. I hadn't had the courage to read it until that moment, but that night, I finally opened it. The handwriting was steady, elegant, but slightly shaky. You could tell he had taken his time with it. The letter began like this: Daniel, my grandson, if you're reading this, it means my time in this world has come to an end, and I just hope you've received what you always deserved, a place of your own, worthy, safe, one that no one can throw you out of again. My hands trembled. I kept reading slowly, as if each word was stitching me back together from the inside. I tried reaching out to your family years ago. I called, wrote, sent letters, but I was always told it wasn't the time, that you didn't need to know. I never believed that. I always thought that if we could meet just once, you'd understand that you were never forgotten. Silent tears began streaming down my face. He continued, your father, my son, made many mistakes, and maybe he paid for them in the harshest way. But you're the chance at redemption that life gave me too late. I can't change the past, but I can try to ensure the future looks at you with the respect you were denied for far too long. I folded the letter gently, like I was tucking away a piece of myself in that envelope. It was as if, suddenly, I had roots. Someone with my blood, my name, had thought of me, had believed in me, without ever knowing me. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. For the first time, the emptiness inside my chest gave way to something I couldn't quite name, but it was light. By the end of that same week, I took all the kids from the shelter to the park. Nothing fancy, snacks, towels, balls, popcorn, a whole day just for laughing. I saw one of the boys get a little too excited on the seesaw and fall backward onto the grass. He stood up holding his tailbone, wincing, but then burst into laughter like the world weighed nothing. That laugh hit me right in the gut. I just stood there watching, realizing, this was exactly what I wanted to build. It wasn't about beating Liam, or rubbing anything in anyone's face. It was about making sure no other child grew up thinking they were worthless. It was about breaking the cycle. That night, I sat on the shelter's porch with a mug of tea in my hands, listening to the muffled laughter of the kids inside. Some were already asleep. Others still whispered to each other in their rooms. And I sat there, alone in the comforting dark, feeling a kind of peace I never thought was possible for someone like me. A peace that didn't require approval, that didn't need to be accepted, that didn't have to fit into a picture frame of a family that had always pushed me out. My adoptive parents never came back. No visit, no call. Their silence was the clearest confirmation of everything I had always known, despite trying to deny it. And it hurt, but it didn't destroy me. I was no longer the boy begging to be seen. Liam disappeared from the map. I heard he tried starting a new company with money from some naive investor, but it crashed again. I don't wish him harm. I just no longer carry the burden of saving someone who spent a lifetime trying to sink me. Today, when I look in the mirror, I no longer see the mud-stained kid picking clothes off the lawn. I see a whole adult, a man who walked through fire and came out the other side, not untouched, but whole. Maybe scarred, but whole. And every night, when I turn off the lights and walk through the shelter's hallways, I see a bit of myself in every bed, in every scared face that slowly learns to trust, in every child who finally sleeps without fear. Maybe I never had a family in the traditional sense, but here, I am the foundation of dozens of futures. And that, to me, is worth more than any last name, any inheritance, any bloodline.